with pretty much the official fall of Kang the Conqueror before that character really even got rolling. We've now pivoted to Doctor Doom being the main big bad of the MCU for at least the next couple phases or so. Well, in general, even with Kang, everything was supposed to lead up to a pretty big event, but now Doctor Doom is going to be the one to be presumably the main big bad of this event, which a lot of Marvel fans, old school and new school, love. It's supposed to be one of the Avengers movies that's coming out in 2027, Avengers Secret Wars. And this is a big deal for a lot of comic book fans who already know about the 1984 miniseries, in addition to the 2015 miniseries, that is the more popular iteration of it. It's the fifth iteration of Secret Wars. There have been multiple. The fifth one, and I believe it's the most recent one, holds the most weight. The first Secret Wars in 1984 was already very critically acclaimed for a bunch of different reasons. In 2015, it only built on what was already there, but did it a lot better. It's made its own, footprint, arguably bigger than the first one. A lot of people are looking forward to it. But with that said, Marvel may need to tread lightly when it comes to how they end up executing and bringing this film and this big old event to life. And then on top of that, they've made it known that between Avengers Doomsday and Avengers Secret Wars, that the movies in between that gap, all of the movies, will be taking place in Battle World, which is where Secret Wars will take place. So they need to get a good amount of things right to satisfy people. So the question for this video is, for those who don't know, and people like me who are not comic book babies, why is Secret Wars such a big deal? Not only for the stories themselves, but what it could potentially mean for the MCU down the line. So just a key summary of Secret Wars, primarily the 1984 iteration, which was the first iteration, and the 2015 iteration, which is the fifth one, which is most likely the version that they'll mainly be pulling from for the actual Secret Wars movie. And really not a summary. It's more so like key points about each one and why they had the impact that they had, but not the actual storylines themselves. So basically going over the reasons why each one is popular in its own right. So just going to touch on that real quick and we'll go forward from there. So there have been multiple Secret Wars events over the last few decades, like I said, with the first iteration being published in 1984, and that one was written by Jim Shooter with art done by Mike Zeck and Bob Layton. Secret Wars is one of the most critically acclaimed and just most fan loved storylines in Marvel's history, possibly in comic history. For Marvel, what I didn't know was that Secret Wars in 84 was the first like super big major crossover that Marvel had done. And at the time, Marvel was behind on that. I don't know if it was like normal, but Marvel apparently was behind on the curve and had not had a big crossover to, just satiate their fan base. And Secret Wars in 84 had done that for them. And they did a lot of things right with it. However, like I said, chances are the MCU will adopt the 2015 iteration, which is the fifth iteration of Secret Wars, written by Jonathan Hickman, drawn by, and I'm probably going to butcher his name, drawn by Isad Ribish, or art done by Isad Ribish. And that iteration of Secret Wars is actually considered more critically acclaimed, more popular, more fan loved than its predecessor for multiple reasons. One, apparently it tells more mature storylines that revolve around the Fantastic Four, because Secret Wars is actually supposed to be a Fantastic Four event. And there are a bunch of different things leading up to it prior to the actual event of Secret Wars, a bunch of different groups, that were like in on the fight or that participated in actions, the Illuminati that Iron Man and Black Panther and people were part of, being one of those groups. There were a lot of different things that directly led to Secret Wars in the comics, with Fantastic Four kind of just now rolling around, and we only have 3 years until Secret Wars is supposed to happen, and we're nearing towards 2 years. They don't have much time to frame it as a Fantastic Four event. So, that leaves a lot of people wondering, well, how are they going to do this? Kind of make it cohesive without rushing it, especially when, again, the first three phases, that all took a decade plus to organize, and they did it well. And it's like, you guys have a few years, so you're still on a short timeline here. More mature storylines that revolved around Fantastic Four, the Avengers. It also included focusing on the different motivations of different characters, like Doctor Doom, Reed Richards of the Fantastic Four. Thanos was even in on it, which we know that's, well, most likely he's not going to pop back up, but we'll see about that, especially with variants and stuff, is the multiverse saga. So who knows? I don't believe Lady Death was part of it, but yeah, it focuses not only on their character motivations, but on motivations from different characters just throughout that are involved. There are a lot of like alliances made between people, unlikely allies for their different reasons. With that said, character motivations are tested. Naturally, is going to take advantage of the multiverse concept. So the list goes on as to, the list of characters that maybe do things that are, not normal to their character, which would be interesting to see on the big screen. But also not to mention in their original Secret Wars, it's Secret Wars is the event that led to Peter Parker, Spider-Man, getting his symbiote suit, getting his black suit. A lot of people don't know that. I did manage to know that part. I did see that. But yeah, Secret Wars is where that comes from. So if you after Robert Downey Jr. was announced to return to the MCU, if you've been on social media, primarily Twitter or X, you've probably seen some fan made posters of a Spider-Man movie or a Secret Wars movie where it has like the face off between RDJ's Doctor Doom, Tom Holland's Spider-Man, Peter Parker facing off, and it'll have like Secret Wars as the title, and then you'll see the symbiote suit kind of forming around Peter. And a lot of people are probably wondering where is that going to come from? It's because in the original Secret Wars, that event is where the symbiote suit came from. It didn't come from like the Sam Raimi movies. It didn't come from like well, not in that sense outer space, but he didn't it wasn't, well, I think it was always an alien species. But yeah, that's the event where he got it from. But not like the way it happened like in the Raimi trilogy. It didn't happen like that. So that's another big thing that has people wondering how they're gonna execute that part. And will that, especially when it comes to the interaction of Doom and Peter that a lot of people are like clamoring about and wondering how that's gonna happen. It makes you wonder if the suit with its typical effects of amplifying aggression is going to affect Peter's processing of seeing his mentor's face again, knowing that this is an entirely different man who is most likely up to no good, and if it's going to lead to like a very brutal showdown or a very emotional response from Peter. So, it's a very interesting thing the way the MCU is setting it up, compared to the typical comic storyline, the regular comic storyline. As far as what we know so far of the MCU plot, which really isn't much, we still don't know everything about the direction that Marvel wants to go with this. And we'll go with with Secret Wars. I was about to say Civil War, with Secret Wars in particular. But we've gotten an update about the group of confirmed cast members that will be in the film. And so far, the confirmed list is not a long list, but the list of other people that are speculated to be in it, because I remember seeing, and I need to stop looking at social media so much, but I remember on Twitter seeing this list of people that are supposed to be in Secret Wars, and it was a long list. But as far as a confirmed list, you have Pedro Pascal, who's going to play Reed Richards or Mr. Fantastic, Robert Downey Jr. as Victor Von Doom, Doctor Doom, and if they do this right and they go far enough, God Doom. I am looking forward to seeing that. Vanessa Kirby as Susan Storm, Joseph Quinn as Johnny Storm, Human Torch, and Invisible Girl, respectively, and Ebon Moss Backrack, if I hopefully didn't butcher that, as Ben Grimm or the Thing. So I am looking forward to that. But even if you look at the speculated list, like I believe Quan Chi or Shang-Chi is supposed to play a part of it. Of course, Tom Holland Spider-Man should be a part of it. Supposedly Aquafina, I saw her name on the list. I don't know about that. I'm sure Sam Wilson's Captain America slash Falcon will be a part of it to some degree. The Avengers, the modern iteration Avengers. Yeah, I'm sure that list will grow of a confirmed list. That's a speculation, but it wouldn't make sense for some of those other characters to not show up, if not all of them. So we'll see. While we haven't received confirmation, I'm sure we would all like to know if Tom Holland mainly will reprise his role as Spider-Man, Peter Parker Spider-Man, especially after we received the news from RDJ saying that he's going to reprise or rather return to MCU, but this time as Doctor Doom. Definitely curious about that. Not to mention the current iteration of the Avengers, possibly the Thunderbolts if they move forward with it. I need to double check and see if they still plan on moving forward with that movie. If they still plan on moving forward with it, even though people have never been super hyped about the movie and probably a whole lot more, they'll probably be part of Secret Wars as well. The main thing I took away from even the confirmed list, but even the speculated list, gonna be expensive. It's long, expensive. They're probably gonna set a record. And then on top of that, when it came to the news of how much RDJ is supposed to make from Return to the MCU, they say it's gonna be well over 80 mil. It's like, goodness great. And that's just one man. Like, how deep are their pockets? I feel like this is kind of like a Hail Mary type thing for them, the way they're doing it. Like, I don't know, I don't want to say putting all their eggs in one basket, but financially, I mean, I know it's Disney. Oh, like, yeah, it's Marvel, and then larger you have Disney, but that's just RDJ. Then you take the rest of the cast to consideration. It's like, how big of a hit are you guys willing to take for these movies? If that's what they want to do, let's hope that they do things right and it turns out well. And if we do give them our money, more so when, because I'm definitely gonna see it. I already know. If and when you give them your money, let's hope we get something that was actually worth our time and the wait. Now, as far as the effects on the MCU timeline, what to expect after Secret Wars when you look at the drop in quality of the MCU at large? And I do mean it's been like a consistent drop since the end of Phase 3. Not to mention the storyline of the 2015 comic itself that they'll most likely be pulling from. They may integrate certain details from 1984 Secret Wars. A lot of people are hoping that Secret Wars will lead to a soft reboot of the MCU. Personally, I was wondering that too, just to kind of get things back on track. They don't have to wipe it clean. Definitely to get it back on track, get it in what seems to be a decisive direction. Fearing that the MCU has grown too big and is trying to do too much at one time, which has contributed to some of the harsh feedback Marvel and Disney at large have both received and have been receiving for the past few years. There's somewhat of a consensus that Marvel needs to pull back to reset, to clean things up. Not necessarily, again, completely start from scratch, but figure out what direction they just want to go to. Secret Wars is kind of seen from the perspective of fans and potential viewers as an opportunity to do that. For a while, it seemed like Marvel was operating with very little to no direction and long term thought after Phase 3 ended, and they never formed a cohesive theme. It seems like they have now, but even then, now that King has fallen and Doctor Doom is taken into the has been brought into the picture, we're kind of starting from ground zero again. Don't even necessarily know what they're gonna do with Doctor Doom now. Honestly, despite you can honestly say Deadpool and Wolverine was in a way like a soft reboot ish type of thing. The Eternals, they said they're gonna bring back the whole I forget the Celestial. They're gonna bring the Celestial thing up, which has been left alone for the past few years, and people have been wondering like, hey, you got this giant stone alien thing protruding out the planet. You guys ever gonna address that? Yeah, so apparently they're finally bringing that back up. So they're starting to kind of go back. Maybe they planted some seeds, they moved away, and now they're starting to go back and piece things together. For the longest time, it just seemed like we don't know what direction you guys are going in with this. And now, since they're changing big bads, it feels like we did get somewhat of a soft reboot. Using the comics as a blueprint, but carving out space to create your own original material is important and has to happen. That's something that a lot of fans don't seem to understand. A lot of fans seem to want the movies to mimic or mirror the comics, detail for detail. Just off the fact that you're changing mediums, that's just not a good idea, and it's not necessarily realistic. Plus, not great storytelling for that medium. That's something that even mega nerds just have a hard time grasping. But when the story doesn't resemble certain storylines to the slightest degree, it comes across as Marvel is only using the names of certain storylines or characters for essentially shock value, which is essentially what people think about Robert Downey Jr.'s return, but this time as Doctor Doom, because it's like you're leveraging his name, you're leveraging the nostalgia and his portrayal of Tony Stark, us knowing how good of the actor he is and was particularly in that space. It's less of a gamble. He's playing a drastically different character, but it's still less of a gamble in terms of ability and how well will he work with the directors, which I believe he's already made a demand. Once RDJ came back, I think he's already made a public like request, or there was a requirement that he has to work with the Russo brothers in particular. It's less guesswork on their part, but again, it's like, are they doing it for shock value? Are they doing it because it's less thinking for them, less of a gamble, less variables, all that stuff? It does make you wonder, as far as the MCU timeline and their ultimate direction, at least for the next couple phases, where are they ultimately going to go? And then after that, once Secret War scraps or wraps rather, where would they go for the next maybe three or so phases? From my understanding, and maybe someone can clarify this, especially with the Fantastic Four movie coming out, because now this has been thrown completely out of whack. But I could have sworn someone said that the first phase was obviously Thanos, that's the big bad. The second phase was meant to be Kang, that had to drop him. That was going to be Doom, it seems like. And then the MCU would ultimately finish up with Galactus. But now King drops, Doom is here. He's going to or rather Galactus is supposed to be the big bad, except he's going to be the villain in the Fantastic Four movie. And if Galactus pops up, it would have to be multiverse saga. They might have to cross universes or something like that. But let's say if in this saga, the mutant slash multiverse saga, they do manage to get rid of Galactus and maybe Doctor Doom, who is supposed to be the big bad for the next group of movies? If that was their original idea, did they switch it? Was that a bad source? Maybe you guys can let me know. The direction of the MCU has been lost for quite some time. I think that's contributed to their drop in quality. And Secret Wars is viewed as a solution for that so that they can do a soft reboot, not necessarily bring a bunch of people back or bring everybody back, but regroup, find out what direction they want to go. And from there, it'll be easier for them to be consistent with the quality of the products that they put out that they want us to see, that we're obviously giving our money and time to keep up with, to the point where there are a lot of people who have not been great fans of the products they've been putting out, but because they don't want to miss certain key parts of the story for when the real big stuff happens, they've been keeping up with it anyway. Or maybe they just do content creation and it's like, well, I just want to talk about it anyway, so why not? Yeah, Secret Wars is supposed to be monumental for the MCU. It's been monumental for Marvel in the comic world. It's supposed to be monumental for the MCU on the silver screen, both in terms of its epic storytelling, its potential to reshape the cinematic universe, good amount of history behind it, so many possibilities, interesting character interactions.